welcome to Tom's Trains and episode 2 of What's on the Workbench. We've had quite a busy week this week, including filming for a new video which is coming out next Thursday, 8 o'clock UK time. A little preview of which is up in the corner of the screen there. Thank you first of all to all the new subscribers that have joined us this week. It's great to be able to add some more people to the group and hopefully be able to keep you entertained with some decent content and some entertaining content as well. This week I've been mainly working on with the tender for the LNER J3 and here is that tender. It's almost completed now. We formed the tender flare and that's what the video is later on today. We'll have a look at that. Painted the chassis as well, so I've just got the brake pull rods to fit and the coal rails, and that's pretty much done, and as you can see it runs quite nicely. Another thing I've done is painted the chassis for the locomotive itself. Just a coat of black on there and got the gearbox fitted in there sort of semi-permanently as well. One top tip for you, if you're painting a chassis like this, don't use 1/8 inch brass rod to mask off the inside of the bearings. I thought it would be a really good idea to do that, but actually what happened was they got stuck and had to work really hard to pull them out. I thought I'd distorted the frame and it wasn't very pretty at all, so I got away with it in the end. But you know, don't do what I do, just learn from my mistakes and my cock-ups and just maybe use like a rolled up piece of paper if you're going to spray the chassis. It should be much easier to remove from inside the bearings, and then if you've got any paint in there at all, just a very light remount just to clean anything else like that. I was looking on RMWeb this week. For those of you who don't know, I've actually got a thread on RMWeb, just details my work. It's called Tom's Hong Kong LNER Workbench, and the link will be in the video description in the bottom. I was just having a little browse on there and somebody was asking about first kits and kit building advice, and they asked specifically about the DGH A1 A3 for a first kit, and I actually have a DGH A1 A3 kit here. We're going to feature this kit as a complete build right the way through, so from the start, everything that you need, all the way through to the end, finishing, painting, lining, all of that stuff is all going to be featured later on this year. But for the meantime, the advice to the guy who was looking to build that as a first kit, I would say, you know, don't do it. The main reason being is that it has outside valve gear. And I think you just need a little bit of experience in building kits and making sure that you can get a chassis to run nicely before you actually build something with outside valve gear. So something that I would recommend would be an 060. I built an LNER J69 as my first kit build. It's an Ian Rice kit from London Road Models, fully brass, goes together very nicely indeed, quite simple, and being brass, there's no danger of melting it. DGH kits are brass and white metal, so there is a possibility that if you're soldering the white metal you could melt it. Can't do that with brass, and you can also, if you make a mistake, you can clean it back down to the bare metal and have another go. So certainly something I would recommend, maybe, you know, a pannier tank if you're into the GWR or something like that. So should be good. That's about it in terms of the updates, what's been going on. Let's have a look back in time this week and see how we got on with forming that tender flare on the J3 tender. Continuing on then with the London Road Models J3, I decided to move on to the tender. We've got the frames done here, like so, and this is just the underframe as well. I've just made a couple of modifications to this. First of all, for some reason they had two fixing holes there and then one at the front here, and I think that one at the front there would have actually protruded, so when you put the nut in there you would have seen it. So I changed it, so I just modified this piece here, put the bolt in there, the captive bolt in there, and then just changed it to one at the back. And on the frame, what I've done here is just put in, this is a new piece of brass that I just put across there. The screw will go through into there and then into the tender, and just modified the rear as well, just to accept one screw hole. So that's the changes I've made to the tender. Now what we've got to do is probably the trickiest part of this, which is to form the tender flare. And you can see on the back here, it's this bit along there. So that flares out to the sides, flares at the back as well. And we've just got to work on that. So what we need to do in order to form this flare is to get the two side pieces. So here's one side piece and here is the flare, like so. Now you can see I've already cleaned it all up. It's really important when you're soldering to have nice clean metal, and just got rid of the tabs. I've just left the two on the top because they're actually easier to take off once this is joined to this. So what we've got to do effectively is join this piece to this piece like that. It's a little bit of a tricky join. I've just noticed that there's a little bit of metal just protruding there, so I'm just going to remove that. Really important to make sure that this is nice and flush, so it sits in really well. In order to solder this, I'm using 179° solder. The reason for that is because when I actually form the tender sides and form the box of the tender around here, the slots in there, so these all fit in, these tender sides fit in like so. When I solder up the corners, obviously there's heat going in there and I don't want these flares to fall off having spent all the time forming them. So we'll go in and we'll just start forming this. And what I do is, I found the best way is to do it from the front and just kind of tack along effectively. So just give that one final clean with the burnishing pen. Make sure that's really nice and shiny. Soldering iron's up to temperature now. I've lost my brush, there it is. So, as always, a little bit of flux just along there. Flux is always required when we're doing this. Just make sure that's lined up, just make sure that it's in the correct orientation as well. And then I use one of these screwdrivers like so, just to hold that down whilst the heat's going on so I don't burn my hands too much. So just taking care to line that up. You can feel there's a little recess in the main side of the brass, and you can just feel when it's in the correct position. So just get some solder. That's slipped again, I can see. There we go. Okay. Just make sure that's level. So all we're doing first of all is just a little tack joint. Just on the front. Just like that. That's just enough to hold it in place. Then I can check whether it's straight. Yes, it is. And then we can work along the piece and just tack it in, making sure it's straight and flush. We want this, we don't want there to be a lip here. Right, this is coming on quite nicely now. However, I do have a slight gap here, so I'm just going to use a bit of filler. Just a bit of solder to fill that gap. Again, not much. I just want to introduce a bit of solder just over the top, like so, to fill that like that. Again, once that's in, I can sand that down and clean it up. And now this is nice and secure. I can also add on, also remove the tabs at the top there. So probably the easiest way to do that is just with a sharp scalpel initially. Just a rocking motion on a hard surface like that. Just remove most of it. There we are. And then just using the file cleanup. I'm just looking to make that nice and neat on the back and on the front. Once this is all clean, we'll go over to the other part of the workshop and we'll start forming the bend on this piece. Okay, we're in the kitchen now, so effectively an outside broadcast. What I want to do is form the beginning of the flare. So I'm using this thing here, which is something that my father-in-law made for me, and I use it for forming the curves on coaches, the tumble home. So you can see it has a rounded edge there and a rounded edge there, and all I simply do to form flares and stuff is put the piece in like so. Undo that, slide this in to approximately the correct location, trap it down like so, do up the bolts on either side, make sure it's in there, and then it's quite good because it means I can't overform the piece. So I simply then use the edge of the worktop like so and just roll it up like so, and that enables me to start the curve off in the tender side without going too far and introducing a kink. And there we are. You can see, I hope, that is starting the flare process off. It's not quite enough just yet, so I just need to do a few extra bits, and we'll swap location once more and we'll get that sorted out. So as you can see, everything's pretty Heath Robinson around here. Got my little workbench vise set up on the edge of my chest of drawers, and what I'm going to do is we've got this flare sort of half formed, and I'm just going to use a screwdriver just to finish off the rest of it. So it goes into the vise like that. Just want to make sure that it's all level. Tighten it up, double check to see that it is all okay. Yeah, that looks fine. I can just see the line of the solder on there, so just do that up nice and tight like so. And then I'm just going to start to bend ever so gently along the length of the piece like so. And I'm not putting on too much pressure. I'm just going a little bit at a time. That's good. I'll take it out. Have a look. Yeah, that's looking fine. Just got to do this end as well. Slot that in. And it's all just by feel really. I'm just looking down the length. I just need a bit more on there actually. It's all quite unscientific, as is most of my modelling really, but that's not too bad. Let me just check against the other piece that I've done. That's pretty much it actually. Yeah, I'm fairly happy with that. Just need to do a little bit more in the middle. Like that. Just to straighten it up. That's it, pretty much there. A little bit of tidying up to do, and that'll be good to go. Right, I finished soldering up the main components of this tender, and I've checked everything else, and we're ready to actually start fitting this thing together now. So here's the front, this is the rear, and these are the two sides. I've just added some beading on there, and this part is made up as well as you can see. So the first thing that I'm going to do is get the side on. The other thing that you'll notice is that I've just switched back to my standard 145 degree solder. And the reason for that is that I don't want to melt these flares that I've taken so long forming here. So I'm just using the 145 solder now. The iron is set to about 360, hopefully that should work okay. So what I need to do is just place this side piece into the slot there, and what I'm going to do is just put a little tack joint just in there, just to initially start off the process of sticking it all together. So just picking up the iron, bit of flux in there, and some heat. There, and that's the tack joint formed. I can see already actually that that's not quite in the right place. I want there to be enough gap at the back to enable this piece to slot in, and I can see I've just left that bit short, so that's the beauty of tacking. So all I need to do is reintroduce the iron. And just move that forward ever so slightly. There's a little click there, and that was the piece falling in place. That's fine now. I just good. Okay, and the same with the other side. So just one tack joint. That's all it is at the moment. So again, right as far forward as I can go. Checking the clearance there, that looks absolutely fine, and it's another tack. That's fine. Just check everything is square and looking good. And then you can see, just by dry fitting, that the rear of the tender fits in absolutely perfectly as well. Right, here we go. We're pretty much there now. Got all the sides on, most of the joints are made. What I'll probably do is just make sure that the solder's coming through on all of them before I actually call it finished. But as you can see at the back, I've just had a slight clean up there, and all of the tender sides and the flares are matching really nicely. I've just got this one final piece to go in at the front, and I'll just show you that one going in just to finish it all off. So it just slots in like that, and what I need to do is just check to make sure that it's fitting correctly and that it's vertical. So I just use this little set square. Just to make sure that looks right on that side, that looks right on that side. And again, just tacking at the bottom to start with. There we go, that's good enough. Tack there. Tack in there. Check, does it all look good? Yes, it does. I'll continue soldering all this in and finishing up, and that's how you do the tender for a Stirling Class D for the LNER. Simple as that. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look back on how to form that flare on the J3 tender. It's one of the sort of trickier parts of the kit, really, getting everything to line up, but using a former just helps so you don't get a kink in the metal. It just gives you a bit of insurance when you're doing that. I certainly wouldn't recommend doing that freehand. But getting that done is really nice, and hopefully now we can progress and get that one finished. That's about it for this week, really. Next Thursday, 8 o'clock UK time, we have that video on how to build the high-level kits gearbox, so that's quite an interesting one. The week after will be, again, Thursday, 8 o'clock, a shorter video, just got a little bit of busy work schedule and going away as well, so not too much time on the workbench, unfortunately. Also remember to have a look at Instagram, Tom's Trains, posting regular updates on there, as well as my workbench thread on RMWeb. Both of the links are actually in the channel header on the YouTube channel there. And if you like the content, please remember to subscribe and enjoy your modelling this week, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.